This episode of Paradigm Profiles is about Orange County's Godfather, Peter Sano Ojeda. The power he wielded, his legacy, his fight to stay in power, and his untimely demise. But before I get into this profile, I want to make something inherently clear. I don't profess to be an expert into the inner workings, the brass tack fundamentals, or the internal mechanics of the Mexican Mafia. I obviously was not a part of this organization, and I know that there are a lot of other individuals out there who are a lot more seasoned and betterly suited to talk about this organization's history than me. So I'll leave that to them. I say this out of an abundance of respect so that I'm not perceived in the same way that others are perceived when they cross over and seem to think that they're qualified experts to recite the history and internal workings of all the other criminal organizations out there, ones they were not a part of. I'm also making this clear because of comments that some of you made, not directly about me, but about those who are dropping this same kind of content. Let's just keep everything above board and real. We all know that there's a handful of us on YouTube who have been doing profiles, who have been breaking down history, and who have been covering a number of events that have transpired within these organizations. Some of it's good, some of it's over the top, and some of it's embellished. That's just the reality of it. Unfortunately, just because someone claims that they were a part of something, this doesn't always qualify them to school or educate on it. If they couldn't teach it while they were active, what makes it different now? Now, I'm not slamming no one, I'm not dropping any lugs, and I'm not hating on anyone. I'm just stating the facts. There's a lot of different kinds of content out there, some true, some false, some self-created, but you guys, as the viewers, have to use your common sense by sometimes doing a little bit of research yourselves and identify what's accurate and who's concocting facts to keep a monthly paycheck coming in. Since I've been putting content out on YouTube, I've seen a lot of different content providers come and go, while others have been able to maintain longevity. You guys are gonna like what you're gonna like. That's just the way it is. But just keep this in mind. The ones who are flooding their channels with content are usually the ones who start fabricating and regurgitating information. So this is in essence my disclaimer. This is to let you, the viewers, know that although I try to be as accurate and as precise as I possibly can, that there's just some things that I don't know being an outsider. It's just not my forte. So I've often had to rely on my own personal knowledge, my own research, and other sources when gathering some of the information that I have provided to write these profiles. With that said, this profile is not a tribute to Sana's entire life, the details surrounding his recruitment, or some of his early personal history. I'll respectfully leave that to others. Instead, this is about some of Sana's final chapters during the peak of his reign, the power struggle he had with Armando Moreno, and Sana's untimely demise. Henceforth, Armando Moreno, aka Mondo, aka Hard Times, was new to the Mexican Mafia, but if he wanted to make his mark, he'd have to go up against one of the gang's most established members, Sana. Nobody seen this coming, including Sana, but a war was about to erupt in Orange County's underworld. Coincidentally, Sana met Mondo in April of 2007 on his way to Pennsylvania in a San Bernardino Federal Detention Center. Mondo, a gang member from Garden Grove, had a stellar resume for the Mexican Mafia and was on the cusp of being a made member of the gang, meaning anyone else would have to get permission to greenlight him for murder or place him on a hit list of people who have run afoul of the gang and are targets for death. Sana took a liking to the younger Mondo and seen the benefits of aligning himself and establishing a partnership on the streets. Mondo had the connections and Sana had the manpower. Together, Sana knew that they could sew Orange County up. Initially, Mondo also seen the benefits of having strong numbers and a lot of manpower working under him, but he didn't share Sana's vision of maintaining a long-term partnership. Instead, Mondo felt like Sana's legacy was coming to an end. He was almost 70, and that getting him out of the way meant that he could run Orange County exclusively by himself and wouldn't have to worry about sharing the wealth. In 1973, Sana became a made member of the Mexican Mafia in Tehachapi State Prison. His sponsor was a longtime inmate member by the name of Raymond Bevito Alvarez. Sana had been at the throne of Orange County since 1987. He solidified his iron clasp on this territory while remaining out of prison for several years. Sana had a lot of radical hardline loyalists that wholeheartedly believed in him as a leader. He was also one of the MS visionaries, as he was one of the first ones to implement a successful taxation program for the different barrios and their drug dealers. He had solid footing with a lot of people helping him build his empire. His one-time girlfriend, Susie Rodriguez, was instrumental in helping him keep open lines of communication between Sana and his gang. Often, the two would talk in coded language, also known as carnival talk, on the phone or in handwritten letters. Unfortunately for Susie, she would later get indicted with Sana for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, extortion, and narcotics trafficking. She faced life in prison, but she would later get sentenced to 6.5 years. And of course, this also put an end to that relationship. So prior to any ensuing conflict that would develop between Sana and Mondo, these two were actually close friends. In 2004, Sana, along with 12 other Mexican Mafia members, were indicted by federal and local authorities in an operation dubbed Operation Nemesis. Affectionately known on the streets as Big Homie, the indictment took down his entire crew. While Sana was serving time in federal custody on this federal racketeering charge, he met Mondo, and the two made plans to work together on the streets. Soon after, Mondo became a newly minted made member. Though Sana was hundreds of miles away, he kept a grip on Orange County gangs and drug sales. If Mondo wanted to control crime in the county, he'd have to take it away from Sana. In July 2011, officials unsealed a federal indictment against Mondo and Sana, as well as 97 of their associates, in connection with racketeering charges. The indictment provided a look at the inner workings of the secretive criminal web known as the Mexican Mafia. Some of the secrets exposed in the indictment would actually lead to more infighting within the gang. While elder members hold sway over the criminal web, newer members are eager to stake a claim. What was once an organization shrouded in secrecy is now flaunted by younger recruits with large tattoos that leave no doubt about their affiliation. In 2007, Mondo joined the Mexican Mafia. Born in 1971, Mondo had an early introduction to crime. He was raised with two younger brothers and had a history of drug use and gang membership by age 18. He was a parolee who had done time for burglary, escape, and possession of a handgun. By 2009, Mondo had been a Mexican Mafia member for 2 years and was eager to flex his muscles. And it wouldn't take long before some of those opportunities began to present themselves. For decades, Latino inmates associated with the Mexican Mafia have considered blacks in state prisons as the enemy. Racial tensions were high when Mondo walked into Chino State Prison on July 17th after he was picked up for possession of a hypodermic needle. As a member of La M, he held authority over gangs inside the prison. Mondo was released the morning of August 8, 2009. When darkness fell, Chino Prison was burning. Mondo gave a green light on all black prisoners in retaliation for an attack on Latino inmates. Apparently, 2 Sureños were jumped on in another part of the prison by a group of Crips, and this incident was unprovoked. It didn't stem from a situation where there was a disagreement or where someone was disrespected. These guys were jumped on solely because of who they were and the color of their skin, and that's why it quickly escalated into a race riot. The then 38-year-old Mexican Mafia member had allegedly ordered Sureño inmates to attack all blacks. The first assault kicked off in Mariposa dormitory, and in order chaos spread into a racially fueled riot that lasted for 2 days. About 200 inmates were injured, including 55 hospitalized with stab wounds, cuts, and head injuries. 50 of the injured were black. Mondo sanctioned and provided detailed instructions on the strategic assault of the black inmate population. The rioters tore up multiple housing units, causing an estimated $5.2 million in damages. Mondo was charged with the rule violation of conspiracy to commit attempted murder, even though he was out of the prison when the mayhem began. This demonstrated his power. By him being able to orchestrate that type of chaos, organize that type of control, and kick it off, clearly demonstrated that Mondo had come into power and that his authority had finally reached its full potential. Originally, this riot was supposed to kick off at other facilities, but it was squashed before it did. Those who were basically in the know knew that Mondo didn't want to wait his turn. He had no interest in waiting for Sana to step down or make any concessions in Orange County. If he wanted to control Orange County and continue his rise in power, then he had to do it now, and he couldn't wait on it. Waiting for Sana to step down or waiting for his turn to lead could have only led to more problems. There were always new up-and-coming MA members just like him who were waiting for their turn to step up and become the next leader. But Mondo was not willing to wait his turn. By the end of August 2009, Mondo sent out a hard candy hit list. The term hard candy is a surreptitious term the MA uses in lieu of the word kill, ordering supporters to kill anyone who supported Sana. For a new carnal like Mondo, this was a ballsy move, not only because he was all but guaranteeing a war, but he was also doing it with a reputable longtime member like Sana, who was firmly established within the organization. That's part of your greed and your alpha male. They want power, they want money, they want respect. Mondo made a quick rise through the Mexican mafia, and the up-and-coming gangster was seen as a top moneymaker with ties to narcotic suppliers and Armenian organized crime figures and identity theft rings. This is the same way other up-and-coming Mexican mafia members such as David Popeye Baron and Jose Bat Marquez were able to gain influence and status within the MA. Not only were these guys huge breadwinners, but they also established very lucrative and very valuable relationships with the Arellano Felix cartel. And when you're able to tap into these types of resources and you become productive on this type of level, you become a crown jewel for the organization. It's almost to the point to where you have carte blanche and unrestricted freedom amongst your peers. As Mondo continued onward in his rise to power, Sana appeared to have attempted to distance himself from Mondo. By October 24th, Sana sent a letter to an associate saying that Mondo could not be trusted and was not authorized to conduct business on his behalf. In the summer of 2009, Mondo ordered the assault and killing of Sana supporters in the Theo Lacy jail in Orange. Because investigators became aware of the conflict, they stepped up security by doing more shakedowns, more random inmate body searches, and constant monitoring on the inmate telephones. This resulted in a number of kites or coded messages being seized that detailed who was to be killed or beaten. Latino street gangs and inmates in Orange County were split as the former allies fought for control of the county jails and the streets for nearly 2 years. Unfortunately, in these types of power struggles, it's always the guys at the bottom of the food chain who always end up getting eaten up and crossed up in the crossfire. Both Mondo and Sana had standing orders passed down to their supporters to assault and kill anyone who supported or was associated with the other's crews. Most of these guys were confused and discouraged for having to fight and attack their former friends and allies, but they didn't have a choice, and if they refused to comply with these directives, they then themselves stood a chance of becoming a target. A lot of the time, these are good dudes that are just following directives that were passed down to them. But at the end of the day, if they're not MA members, they don't have a voice and they just become unintentional casualties. But the Mexican Mafia still had unwritten rules that were now being broken. The unwritten rules of the Mexican Mafia say members cannot interfere with each other's business or politic against one another. Although these rules are often broken and sometimes go unenforced, this was still a dangerous game for Mondo to play with someone like Sana. Throughout the summer of 2009, Mondo and Sana continued to go after each other's supporters inside the Orange County jails. Assaults continued for months, but whether out of strategy or out of caution to skirt yet another one of the unwritten rules, they did not target each other. That unwritten rule was that a member cannot raise a hand against another member without approval. In January 2010, several members of the Los Angeles and Orange County Mexican Mafia met to discuss the feud, and it was understood that Orange County belonged to Sana. This was bad news for Mondo, but the worst was yet to come. Some of Sana's supporters dug into Mondo's background and discovered something about him that was unforgivable. Mondo's criminal history included a 1991 conviction for second-degree murder stemming from a fight outside of a house party in Garden Grove. Though many mafia members have violent pasts with homicides on their records, it was the root of the argument and the victims that would stain his reputation. According to a police report of the 1990 incident, Mondo and a gang associate argued with a 25-year-old man about their gang involvement and who had spent more time behind bars. The man is believed to have criticized Mondo for being a member of a predominantly black street gang. The conversation became more heated when the man, according to the police report, said, "Brown pride stays with brown pride, not a ninja like you." A fight erupted in the street and Mondo left, only to return with a 6'7", 290-pound enforcer. Two men were stabbed to death in the fight. 1 year after the sentencing, the conviction was overturned in part because the court allowed improper testimony by a gang expert. But the trial proceedings were of little interest to the Mexican Mafia. What suddenly became relevant in 2010 was that Mondo was at one time a member of a traditionally black gang that killed Latinos. He used to be a Crip. To complicate matters, those who were killed were members of one of the largest gangs in Orange County, the same gang where Sana got his start. That put a major wrinkle in the Mexican Mafia. Everyone was asking themselves, how could this have happened? How could a former Crip get recruited into the Mexican Mafia? And how could he get through the screening and background checks that are meticulously and religiously done? You've got almost 70 years of the Mexican Mafia and it's never happened. At one point in this conflict, Sana was actually losing ground in the war as Mondo had a lot of supporters who had ties to some of the bigger street gangs. But the Emma became an equalizer for Sana, standing firmly behind him and eventually sent in reinforcements, which ultimately resulted in him prevailing. At the conclusion of this narrative, you guys are going to see an exclusive, never before seen video of Sana with an informant sitting in a vehicle as they discuss issues that were transpiring with some of the local street gangs in Orange County, Brownside and Townsend. The informant is obviously working with the cops, but he tells Sana that an individual who he refers to as Wacko from Brownside keeps coming through shooting at the paisas and the homies, and that he's not even asking them where they're from, he's just shooting. This informant understands that Sana has the power to deal with situations like this, but he also obviously understands what motivates and influences Sana and other MA members like him: money, capital. If you pay close attention to the conversation, you'll notice that at one point the informant pulls out some money and makes a personal contribution to Sana, prefacing that it's for him as an offering out of respect. This is a classic way of showing how influence is bought. Money speaks, and this informant understands that as long as he continues to keep Sana on the payroll, that he'll be able to maintain and harness that influence through him. NF members operate the same way. In essence, they're conduits to that power and influence on the streets, and either other Northerners, associates, or even others within the organization know that this can be influenced through money. Watch how Sana perks up after money exchanges hands, and this informant tells him that this small contribution is from him and that it's an offering of his respects. From that point on, Sana seems to be real receptive to what this informant is telling him. Listen to how the rest of the conversation goes. Either this guy has a lot of credibility with Sana, or Sana's just easily influenced, because just based on what this guy told him about Brownside, Sana was willing to put a green light back on the whole gang that fast, without any checks or follow-up. Unfortunately for Sana, this video was taken at the end of his legacy and during his last few months of freedom before he would end up getting wrapped up for the last time. On April 30th, 2011, authorities recorded a three-way phone call in which Sana told another Mexican Mafia member to put the word out: Mondo was to be killed. After this phone call was recorded and authorities wrapped up their investigation, Sana and the other Mexican Mafia member were brought to Orange County to face racketeering charges. At Sana's age, this would be a death sentence for him, and he was all but guaranteed a funeral in federal prison. Sana would end up getting sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, and he would continue to control Orange County. But as expected, his last prison sentence was also his death sentence. On June 7, 2018, Sana died of a heart attack at the age of 75, alone in his cell at MCFP Springfield, Missouri. One of Sana's most memorable moments in his criminal history with the Mexican Mafia was of him wearing his best flannel Pendleton at El Salvador Park, wielding his will over a collection of Southern California's most hardcore gangsters while standing on a raised platform like a king on his throne on a cool January afternoon in Santa Ana 26 years ago. This brother will forever be remembered by friend and foe as one of those who not only remained loyal and committed in his beliefs, but also the true godfather of Orange County. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Paradigm Profiles. This week was slow, but we're going to start picking it back up and dropping that fire that you guys have been waiting for.
Watch out, pero está así. There's this wacko from Brownside, and these vatos from Townsend, going over there tomorrow, capping, shooting biceps, homie. Shooting the homies' uncles and shit like that. They're not even asking where you're from or not. I'm from Brownside. See, Brownside and Townsend. And, yo no quiero, like, I told the homies, you know what, keep back, because, I can't work it. They're doing something with you, ¿sí me entiendes? About the Townsend. So I don't want to sit there on your shoulder nada, ¿sí me entiendes? Entonces, see if we can look into that, ¿qué pasa, ¿sí me entiendes? Brownside. She took the light off of him. We'll put it right back on him again. Yeah, porque, they just shut the thing down. Me están preguntando que va a ser más wacko el vato. Wacko, Brownside. Watch out. Watch out. This is for me, homie. Okay. With more respect, homie. Estoy trabajando yo y, just tú sabes, homie, gracias por talking. Stay out, homie. Stay out. So, you want me to get back on you? Yeah. Because right now I told the homies, palabras on the street right now, that's on double downtown, so I got nada. Yeah. Let me see what's up, you know what I mean? Because, get back with me tomorrow, homie. Get back with me mañana? Tomorrow, around this time? Yeah. Or in a couple of days. Hey, what's up with Chico, homie? I don't know where he's at. You got a number? ¿Qué pasó? Oh, you know what? You got a new number? I don't have his number. I've been waiting for him to call me. I haven't been able to reach him or not, homie. I'm waiting for his call, man. I'm waiting for his suggestion. Yeah, was that right? Yeah. Oh, no, loud. ¿Qué te iba a decir? You got a new number? I got the same number. Okay. I'm going to get another phone because the piece of the voice keeps dying out of me. It doesn't ring until I'm talking and it just cut off. Okay. And as far as in the neighborhood, ahorita nadie está haciendo nada, homie. Okay. The paisas that were doing something, they're on Mexico on vacations right now. Whatever. I'm just thinking, if I got your back on whatever I need to do, you know what I mean? As far as I clean up the people and all that matter. Yeah. You got that. All right, homie, and a ver si we can look into that. Outside. I'll do that. I'll be on it. Entonces, ¿qué has hecho mañana? Yeah. All right, homie, muchas gracias.